recap of what has happened and then move on to today's two subjects. So far, what we have covered in these Gatha classes is a brief history of the periods of various Iranian dynasties, so that you get some idea of the languages in which our prayers are. And as I told you earlier, they happen to be in about 5 different languages. We are harkening back to the earliest, which is Gathic Avesta, which is the exact equivalent of Rigvedic Sanskrit. Now, having given you that brief idea, historical idea, we then went into basic prayers such as Hashem and Yatha, went into the Kasti prayer, went into how a chief priest at the time of Shapur II, who was between 309 and 379 AD, actually formulated the Kasti prayer, which is in 3 different languages. And then we started with the Gathas proper. And these 17 chapters, in which are captured about 217 hymns, which are all ascribed to Prophet Zarathustra, are in 5 different parts. The parts having been put as such because they are different in meter, and fortunately because they are poetry and not prose, one miracle is that they have actually reached us as they are. They were in fact spoken for thousands of years before they were first written down. And we began with Yasnaha 30, which is the 3rd chapter in the first Gatha, Aunaveti, which was what I call the little sermon, where Zoroaster speaks to a whole lot of people. And the whole object of the sermon was to tell people that moral choice is entirely yours. Choose correctly. Choose as the holy or bountiful spirit chose at the beginning of time, and not as his twin, his exact twin in every way chose, which is to go astray. Then after the Yasnaha 30, we went into Yasnaha 45, which is chapter 3 of the 2nd Gatha, which I call the greater sermon. Greater why? Because by then, obviously, Zoroaster's faith had caught on, and people came from near as well as from afar to listen to it. And various great truths are ennobled in this chapter. Verse number 8 being perhaps one of the greatest truths so ennobled. This, along with Yasnaha 43.1, which you all may note, that is 45.8 and 43.1, which is the very opening of the 2nd Gatha, is perhaps the high point. These 2 verses are the high point of all 217. We dealt with the first one. The second one, the very opening declaration, is fantastic, which you might turn to before we get into today's subject. The opening declaration of 43.1 you will find at page 193.
193.
193. Yeah. It deals with the same subject as Hashem Bahuti, namely the path of truth leading to Ushta or happiness. Now, the opening words of this extremely brilliant verse are Ushta Ammai Yammai Ushta Kammai Chit, which basically means happiness to him who is able to give happiness to whomsoever else. It is one of the most outstanding declarations in the religion of man. And it is immediately followed with the progress that is very important for every soul on its onward journey to immortality. And the very words speak of the 2 gifts which we spoke about earlier, Devishi and Uttayiviti, which basically mean that when you go down this very difficult path of truth, you will attain strength of character certainly, and life will take on a completely different meaning, because from now on, you will no longer be guided by only practical considerations, but you will be guided by idealistic ones. And these two key words again you find at 12 and 13 of this extremely beautiful verse. And finally, therefore, the verse ends by saying that you uphold this eternal law, which is timeless, namely that each soul must progress ultimately into realms of light by giving as much light as possible to others so that it may achieve light itself. Now, all this we did and more. And then the last two occasions we dealt with the various facets of Ahura Mazda himself, God himself. And on the very last occasion, we went into all the verses which spoke of Zarathustra, of his struggle, of his prophethood, how he begins as a Ratu, which is a teacher, and how ultimately ends up as a social, which is an actual savior of mankind. And together with this, we also digressed and went into the small Maga brotherhood that he created around himself so that the message would spread, and how there were three categories in this brotherhood, and how they were to help each other in spreading the faith. This ultimately is where we stop. For today, what is important to bring into bold relief in this extremely difficult religion to follow is that not only must you attempt to do good at all times, and good is now defined by the great triad of thoughts, words, and deeds. Good is further defined and refined by the spread of happiness that only an illuminated intellect, illuminated with abstraction and illuminated with the ultimate goal that is to be seen, would do. But not only is the Prophet content with this, he is equally emphatic in telling you that you must fight evil. Now these verses are very, very important in that he tells you how to fight evil. The word fight is perhaps a misnomer because non-violence is the first creed. Very important. And one very interesting verse which we will deal with specifically is how the Prophet deals with somebody who is extremely violent and difficult. His only answer to him is that, look, I wish to illuminate you intellectually as I have illuminated the others. I don't fight you with violent means. So these verses are again important from a Zoroastrian's point of view, because a Zoroastrian cannot be content with good thoughts, good words, good deeds, giving happiness to others. Equally important in this revolution is the fight against evil, against moral choice made wrong. And this whole group of verses deals with how that fight is to be carried on. After this, hopefully if we have time today, we will go into another very important facet which I have been questioned about from the very beginning of these lectures, which is all the verses which deal with the importance of prayer. So these are the two subjects we wish to cover today, and hopefully next Sunday we will go on to the judgment verses which are equally important, and then perhaps one Sunday later wind up with, say, a bird's eye view of the faith which you find in the fourth Gata, which is in one chapter. Now if I may take you straight away to the verses dealing with evil and three interesting persons who are named as those who in fact propagated. One, as I told you, was Yima, which is equal to King Jamshed, after whom the great Navroz festival is celebrated every year. Incidentally, as a matter of interest, in the great Qilla-e-Mualla, which is our Red Fort, Navroz continued to be celebrated because it started from the time of Akbar. This was then built by his grandson Shah Jahan. And Navroz was celebrated with great gusto every single year under the Mughal. and continued till Bahadur Shah Zafar had to give it up. So interestingly enough, 5 minutes away from here, every 21st March there was a massive Navroz festival.
Next celebration there.
Yes, at the Mughal court.
But was it celebrated as Islamic?
Absolutely. Because Akbar, as you know, not only was very, very taken up with all the great religions of the world, he was equally taken up with ours. And the 2 or 3 things that he did was, after Dastur Mayyarji Rana came and actually preached to him in 1579 at Fatehpur Sikri, 3 things that he did were, one, he had a fire burning 24 hours at his court, first thing. Second thing that he did was to have our calendar. This is a little known fact, surprisingly. And throughout the Mughal rule, in fact till Shah Jahan, who then rechanged it, and throughout the Nizamate of Hyderabad, right till now, if ever you spoke of a particular event which took place on a particular date, you would say Ma Farvandi Rojbera. So this is the second innovation. And the third innovation which Akbar of course came out with was the great fight for good and against evil, which is the kernel of the religion, which crept greatly into his Deen-e life, which you know ultimately failed because it had only a soul and not a body. So it is important also for every world religion to have a body, which is the church around it, with rituals, etc., for continuity, because without them, everything goes bad. So with this short digression, we come back to the verses dealing with evil in the Gathas. Now the first interesting one is Yasna 30.6, which you will find at page 120. Please turn to it.
120.
120. What it says is, again, interestingly, there are key words such as heres, erect, banayan, painful, English word painful, which you will find at word 3 and word 23. Now what this says is basically that those who follow many gods miss the path, get deluded. And this delusion arises because of doubt. This is a very interesting concept. Now, doubt again is spoken of in Yasna 31.12, which I may ask you to turn to immediately. Keep it with you and see the 2 verses together. 31.12, which is at page 137. This verse tells us that there is complete freedom of speech on earth. So everybody says exactly what he feels like. He may be a false speaker, he may be a true speaker, he may be enlightened, he may be unenlightened. And the trouble is that if you get swayed by one who is unenlightened, because there is doubt, then you do not choose correctly. And that is why it's very important that Almighty comes to the rescue. If you remember, Almighty again is a key concept which is throughout all these areas, which speaks basically of thinking correctly, right-mindedness. Almighty, Man. So this verse tells us, therefore each lifts up his voice, whether false or true, whether enlightened or unenlightened, and still with head and heart, Almighty alone will come to your rescue when there is doubt. So come back now to 30.6. at page 120. So, here again the key word is doubt, peresmane, which is word number 11. And this verse again tells you that persons who believe in many gods do not choose correctly. In fact, they choose what is the worst mentally. And what follows is anger, Aishma, which is word number 19, 19. And word number 23, which is Banayan, painful. Translated here as pollution, pollute, same sense. And Maretanu, as you know, is one who is born to die, mankind. So this is the first important step taken by the Prophet telling you that when you doubt and you do not have right-mindedness with you, you will not choose correctly. And you know that you have not chosen correctly when you are a person of anger instead of a person with love. With this, we come on to the great offender King Jamshed in 32.8 at page 155. Now Jamshed is the same as Yima and exists both in Hinduism and our faith. Yima is none other than Yama, perhaps the same personage. And why is he the same personage? Because his father was Vivanghat here and Vivasvat there. So it is definitely the same person. Yama in the Hindu pantheon, as you know, is the god of death. So obviously, a person who brought about what is most feared. And equally in our pantheon, he was a very, very great king who, unlike the great flood which takes place in virtually every other great world religion, had an ice age to combat which he built a Vara. Now a Vara is a massive underground cavern where everybody went and hid. Interestingly enough, this is referred to in the Vandida. And today, in a place called Derinkuyu in modern Turkey, you have 10 levels in a massive underground place, which was like a city. And the 10th level is supposed to be very, very, very old. Maybe going back to 8 to 10,000 BC, when perhaps King Jamshed lived. So, what was a fairy tale myth in the Vendida may well be correct regard being had to the archaeological evidence that is available in Derinkuyu in Turkey. So, this verse now tells us.
Can we have an access to this archaeological district which we can spread around?
I'm sorry?
Can we have an access to this archaeological?
Yes, people go and visit it.
Yes, I visited.
And several people have actually visited it and been told about these layers of cities. As you know, every ancient site is in layers because the further down you go, the older it is generally in archaeological terms. And this had 10 layers. And the 10th apparently is something very, very good. Now we come back to 32.8. And this specifically speaks of Yima as being an angry old man, Ainangam, word 2. It is translated here as a sinner. We have already been told that one good indicia of your having chosen wrongly is anger. So this extremely angry gentleman, who is the son of Vivanuso, number 3. And apparently father and son suffered from the same thing. So Vivanuso and Yima, Sravi means have been heard of. We've heard of these two gentlemen. And what is interesting is What they did was, in order to make us happy, they didn't spread happiness. They illumined the material welfare of this world. Very important. Gauss, Baga, Svaremno. Baga is material. Svaremno is through light, therefore illumined. And Zoroaster says very clearly, from these, please keep me completely apart. I wish to be judged by what I have done. The last part. So this is the first reference to somebody who has actually chosen wrongly. And we are told that in our history, he was a very great king to begin with. And ultimately, of course, went astray. And the Kvarena, which is the almost like a royal falcon which sits on your head when kingship is given to you, actually flew away from it. So this is the other interesting verse. Now you come to 32.9. And we come to another personage here. A gentleman called Grehma. Grehma. Who is basically referred to in these 4 or 5 verses. Now in 32.9, you begin with dus sastis. Dus always means bad. So dus mata, you remember? So dus is somebody bad. Sasti is a person who teaches, teacher. And srava is teaching. The key word here is morendat, word number 4. It occurs in all the verses which follow this. And you may either translate it as distort or corrupt. I think corrupt brings out the sense better.
That's Srava, you're saying.
No, the word morendat. Srava means teaching.
Teaching.
Yeah. Morendat means distort. It will be translated as distort. Perhaps corrupt would be better. And what is important is, such teachers corrupt through their teaching the scheme of life, where we are going, why we are going, etc. And what is beautiful is, he removes everybody from their heritage. Now, heritage is a very beautiful word. Tarapolwala, I think, has got the grasp of what is being said. But the actual word used is istim, word number 11. Istim is nothing but wish, really. It has occurred earlier, and I have pointed it out earlier as well, and it will occur throughout. So he removes us from our real desire, is how I will put it, closest. Heritage brings it out even better. From what we ourselves really want. Which is, Berexdam, in this context, very important, precious. Truth is now very precious. Aitir is truth. Taught by Vangyaushmananda. And he says, this is really the expression, Uksda is word, which you come across often. Word number 18, Uksda. Minus, man, mind. So this is really the expression, word, of what is in my mind. And as a result, therefore, I look to you and I look to Asha. I look to you, God, and I look to truth. Next verse, next page. Again, the word morendat appears as word number 5. Again, the word srava appears. What was word number 3 is now word number 4. So, interestingly enough, this Grehma, who is spoken of here in these verses, was probably a proponent of black magic. Now, we get this from this verse, because people like Grehma seem to denounce as most sinful coming out into the open and being in light. So they denounce the sun, they denounce the earth, they denounce everything. That is very, very bountiful to us. And then they say, people like him are really poisonous because they attempt to convert, or convert really is a misnomer here, attempt to bring over to their way persons who are otherwise good. And is very picturesquely put that this is like a weapon that is hurled against mankind when people like this preach. So obviously the prophet here is railing against somebody who was into black magic at that point of time. Tarapurwala's footnote is interesting. It says this refers to the secret and dark magical rites practiced by the Daivas, as opposed to the worship of the sun and the earth in open natural spaces advocated by the prophet. I don't agree. The prophet never said worship the sun or the earth in the Gathas. There's no worship of sun or earth. What the prophet is denouncing is something very different, and saying that those who say that you please perform black magic arts and do not come out in the sun are persons who should be kept away from you. The only thing worthy of worship, remember, in this 44.20, page 228. Here again the prophet is asking this, if you remember, is the question chapter. Second chapter of the Ustavati 44. It's questions one after the other. So the 20th verse is the last question. And he's asking, why have these Daivas become so powerful? They seem to have delivered over to the priests of the old faith. Again, Karpan and Uzik. They have delivered them over to wrath, anger. Again, the same word, Eshma. Word number 18. And here Kava is brought out very clearly, 22. 22 is Kava. So through a king who is powerful, she is made to bewail in bondage. Urudoyata, word number 24, means basically to make sad. Sad, S-A-D. And you will again find the word Vastrem, word number 29, which is the same as the word used in the last part of Yathaved. So, ultimately what this verse tells us is that Zoroaster himself is very upset by the fact that they all appear to be extremely powerful. They appear to have handed over the earth to anger and therefore violence. And that instead of spreading happiness, which we saw in 43.1, we are seeing the exact opposite here. So put 43.1 here along with this. Usta ammai yammai usta kammaichi, we saw. These people are doing the exact opposite. Anger, violence, sadness.